Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm really pleased to be joined once again on my channel by the wonderful Richard McCook. So how are you doing, Richard?
I'm well, Ross, and it's great to be back on your channel again.
Excellent, thank you. So I invited Richard back on to do another a sort of top 10 list that we both kind of love and enjoy doing. This time looking at 10 of our favourite second albums by various artists. So the second album kind of has a bit of a reputation in the kind of pop music and the kind of rock music world of being quite the difficult second album tends to be the kind of old cliche. But there are a lot of examples of absolutely brilliant second albums, which we'll hope to shine a light on, today. So we've each picked 10. So I'll just let Richard kick off with his first choice.
Is blowing in the wind. The answer is
okay. Now these are not in any particular order, apart from the number one album. Okay, I don't know if you'll be able to guess it or not. Okay, my number 10. Well, I'm going to say number 10, as I say, it's not in any order. It's Bob Dylan, the freewheeling Bob Dylan, 1962. His debut was really cover versions with a couple of his own tracks, but this is absolutely brilliant. And this is the album that the Beatles fell in love with. Got to number one in the UK. Fantastic songs like Blowing in the Wind. It's a very lyrical album, like all of Bob Dylan's stuff. Just him, the acoustic guitar, and the harmonica. Although there is one band track on it which sticks out a little bit, Karina Karina, which I thought, I don't understand why not just make it all acoustic. But you get beautiful songs like Don't Think Twice, It's All Right. I first got into this in the very late 70s whenever my brother bought the Bob Dylan albums. And this is the one I fell for. This was my favourite Bob Dylan album. And the one track I played constantly was Talking World War III Blues, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. But you've got A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, which has been covered by a lot of people. Brian Ferry had a top 10 hit with that. And half of this has probably been covered by Peter, Paul and Mary. So it's a fantastic album. Second album, iconic cover, one of the best covers ever in my view. And that gets in my 10 list.
Would you say that's your favourite Dylan album then?
I would say it's probably my third now, behind Blonde on Blonde and Highway 61.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I must say that's actually one of his albums which I don't own. I've got most of his 60s ones so far. I've got all Bringing It All Back Home and Highway 61 and that, but that's one I've yet to pick up, so I will it's on my radar to get. My number 10 choice is Joe Jackson's I'm the Man album here. Now, I've chosen this one kind of because it kind of very much bucked the trend of the time for bands kind of releasing artists kind of releasing slightly lesser second albums, especially in the same year. This came out in 79 the same year has his equally excellent debut Look Sharp. And I think there's always a case to be made that he could have combined both albums and made a kind of absolutely killer kind of either one album or even a really impactful kind of double album. But as it is, they're both just really solid albums. And in some ways it is a continuation of the debut in terms of its style and kind of sound. It's the same band pretty much, and it kind of, in some ways, the songs are very similar in style. But it just kind of shows that he kind of kept the momentum up a bit, which I think some artists kind of struggled to. So Joe Jackson there, I'm the Man, would be my number 10 choice.
I considered that as well, but my favourite Joe Jackson album is actually the Joe Jackson Band and Beat Crazy, the one after that.
Really interesting, yeah.
Which I didn't like at the start, but then I put it in the car on CD, played it, and it's turned out to be my favourite. But yeah, those first two, I'm the Man and Look Sharp, are brilliant. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those ones. Beat Crazy, I've not quite yet been able to get into. I bought it. I didn't really like it, to be honest. There's maybe what I need to.
That's the same as me, Ross. But I played it in the car and just kept it in the car. And absolutely loved it. My next choice, and James Griffiths will be happy with this, and it's a band I don't think you like, or if you do, you've ever shown. And it's Queen 2 by Queen. I don't know if you're a fan of them or not, but I love the debut. The debut is probably my second favourite Queen album behind Night at the Opera. This is actually my third, and this is absolutely brilliant. It is their most proggy of all their albums. Side 1 is all Brian May songs, apart from Someday, One Day by Roger Taylor. And side 2 is all of Freddie Mercury songs. One hit single, the very first hit single off this was Seven Seas of Rye, which is great. But you know, things like the Fairy Fellers, Masterstroke, Ogre Battle, they're all brilliant songs. Even Brian May's Father to Son, absolutely brilliant. And as I say, it is very proggy. And it's one of their most consistent albums as well. Again, this took me quite a while to get into. But I even think that the debut is more accessible. But once this gets in, it sticks, and I think it's an absolutely brilliant album. So from 1974, Queen 2, and it got to number 5 in the charts. It was their first hit album.
Very good. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a massive fan of Queen. I kind of like some of the hits, but I think I've got 2 of their albums, but certainly not that one. So again, maybe one for me to kind of check out. So my next one, number 10, is 10cc and Sheet Music. Now, in many ways, this is the kind of quintessential 10cc album. It kind of shows them very much as a collective of their kind of 4 very talented musicians they kind of collaborate in kind of different ways on this album. I think every song has a kind of unique kind of writing credit with kind of a different combination of the 4 members. And I guess it kind of, it's just a very adventurous album, quite funny in places, very arty but just good pop music, I think. And I think as well, going beyond this, they would kind of evolve a bit into the 2 camps, like the Godley and Creme and Goldman Stewart camps. And they wouldn't really do this kind of stuff again, where they are sort of mixing the 2 styles together, and then eventually they would kind of disintegrate kind of 2 years later, with Godley and Creme leaving the band. But no, a great record here, and one I think which is their kind of signature. I'm gonna say their signature album. Probably the next album was the original soundtrack was a bigger album, but I think this is more characteristic of what 10cc we're all about for me.
The first 2 10cc albums are my favourites.
Mm-hmm.
My favourite is actually the debut. I absolutely love that album. I think it's just so out there, and that's not bad. There's a track on that I love called "Is it the Sacroiliac?"
Yeah,
which I think brilliant.
Take a walk on the wild side. Said, hey, honey.
Next one on my list, and it was an album released in 1972. It got to number 13, but it didn't chart until 73. And it is one of the best albums of the 1970s, and it's Lou Reed's Transformer. Now, this one is famous for being produced by David Bowie and Mick Ronson, and it has the 4 biggies on it. There's 4 most famous songs: Vicious, Walk on the Wild Side, Perfect Day, and Satellite of Love. But there is not a bad track off this. Andy's Chest is magnificent. Makeup, New York Telephone Conversation. I was thinking of the Bee Gees there. I'm So Free. It's just a really accessible album. It's my favourite Lou Reed album, and it did chart. It got to number 13. But everything after that didn't do very well at all. His follow-up to this, his 3rd album, was Berlin, which is on a par with this, although it's a completely different album. It's a very, very dark and moody, and it's quite a shocking album as well whenever you hear it. But Lou Reed Transformer, I think, should be in everybody's record collection, including Rob Walker's, even though he can't stand him. Okay, so that's my next choice.
Yeah, that was what I recently picked up, so I'm safe there. I've got that one, yeah. And although one thing to note with my list, actually, because of course he was in the Velvet Underground before, so I actually didn't include any kind of ones where they were, say, in a band previously, sort of thing. These are kind of actual second albums, in many ways, because I guess Lou Reed had already made made a handful of Velvet albums, hadn't he? But yeah, I mean, I guess it still counts as a solo record, yeah. So my next one is the House Martins' second album, People Who Grin Themselves to Death. Chose this one, I guess, in some ways it is often overshadowed by London Nil Hole 4. I think that is the iconic House Martins album, but I think this one is equally as good. In many ways, it does show a lot of development, particularly in Paul Heaton's writing style. I think he was becoming a bit more subtle, as a songwriter, I would say, becoming a bit more witty and kind of you can really hear in some ways with a lot of these tracks, they sound like My Beautiful South songs again, like some ways, like just in terms of like the writing style and like kind of musically as well, a bit more diverse. You got things like The Light Is Always Green and Build on here, where he's kind of expanded their sound like a little bit. So that's what I quite like about this like record. And also I think it's probably got I'd say maybe Heaton's best vocals are on this album from like his whole career. I'd say like some of those vocals are just stunning. So yeah, people who grin themselves to death would be my number 8 choice.
I think that's a more consistent album than the first, although the highlights of the first are huge.
Mm-hmm.
But the track on that called I Can't Put My Finger on It, I think is absolutely hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's fantastic lyric writing.
In restless dreams I walked alone.
Okay, my next choice, and I think you may approve of this one. I'm going Simon Garfunkel, Sounds of Silence. Now, I have to say, it has to be the UK version, not the American version, because the UK version has Homeward Bound on it, and they kept it back for the Parsley Sage album in America. I think it's really, really excellent. Now, it is songs from the Paul Simon songbook, but Art Garfunkel's voice really does enhance these songs. I love the electric Sounds of Silence, or the Sound of Silence, sorry. A lot of the real big Simon Garfunkel fans say no, it has to be the acoustic, but I think the electric one wins every time. Leaves That Are Green. Even songs like Blessed have really got, it's really good folk rock. The only thing I don't like about this is the track Angie. Now, it comes after Somewhere They Can't Find Me, and it's exactly the same guitar chords and the guitar picking, and to me, I don't know why they put that on. Somewhere They Can't Find Me is actually a rewrite of the track Wednesday Morning 3 a.m. I like both of them. But even things like A Most Peculiar Man, April Come She Will, and even the really 60s We've Got a Groovy Thing Going is brilliant, and then the excellent I Am a Rock. This is a fantastic album, and it's another one of those sleeves I think is brilliant. I think it's a brilliant cover, so that's Simon Garfunkel, Sounds of Silence.
Yeah, fantastic stuff there. I mean, yeah, like I slightly overlooked that one, I have to say, but just going through the tracks there, I mean, there's so many classics on it, but again, a lot of them were on, the Paul Simon songbook, but just, they, like with Art Garfunkel, it just adds a lot.
It does.
Like to the album, yeah, absolutely. So my next one is Blur and Modern Life is Rubbish. I've chosen this one. This is a case where a band kind of changed direction, really. Like, their first album, Leisure, wasn't all that well received. It was a kind of Manchester kind of vibe to like the album, and again, there was a bit of a backlash from it because that style was kind of just becoming out of fashion, sort of like by like that point. So they kind of took a step back and then kind of almost completely changed their sound, taking much more of a 60s kind of influence like on here. So a lot of the songs very influenced by the 60s, particularly like the Kinks, like this album and like this album that Damon Albarn's really channeling like his inner like Ray Davies like on like this album. It's also notable a few like early sessions on here were produced by Andy Partridge. Like he was brought in to produce a few songs. It didn't quite work out. I didn't quite see eye to eye. Like sort of like Blur, like Andy Partridge. But I think like the end result is just brilliant and is one of like the best. I don't call it like a Britpop album because that kind of devalues it a little bit. But it is one of the best '90s albums for me, and like a really strong second album.
I agree. It's one of my favorites as well. I remember back in the day. Whenever it came out, that Paul Weller was raving about it as well, so he was a fan of it.
Yellow is the colour of my true love's here in the morning.
Well, my next one you probably don't know, and it's very similar to Bob Dylan's Freewheelin', but it's Donovan's Fairy Tale from 1965, second album of course, and his first two albums were like Bob Dylan copycat albums basically. Okay, he wrote all his own songs, but he played just acoustic guitar, harmonica, and had a bit of a Dylan voice, and it's whenever I liked Donovan. After this one, he went all psychedelic, his voice changed, he got very twee and airy-fairy, but this here is just magnificent acoustic guitar and harmonica. But tracks like Colours, now I'll Try for the Sun is on this. Now Lindsey Buckingham recorded that for his album from 2006, which I can't remember the name of. But he did a cover version, a very good cover version as well. Sunny Gooch Street was covered by a few people as well. But it's just really catchy and it's easy to listen to. It's maybe not as gravelly as Dylan, but yeah, I've always loved Donovan's first two albums, and this is his second, Fairy Tale, so it gets in.
Great stuff, yeah, like one for me to check out there again. I think I've got a hits compilation, but I think that's about it on Donovan for me. At number 6, again, I had to put this album in. I wasn't quite sure where to put it, but it's The House of Love, the Butterfly album, or otherwise, like, yes, it's the kind of second self-titled album, like in like way, the discography is very confusing. I mean, this is an example where bands kind of expanded their sound again, like all like had like their second album. So the first album was very concise songs. There's only 10 tracks. It's about half an hour long in total. Whereas this one here, they kind of they expanded the sound. Songs are a lot more like atmospheric, like on here. And I guess it was also it was definitely the most successful album they had. Shine On was a hit, I would say, or minor hit, like at least. Beatles or the Stones, I think, was also top 40, and then 2 should have been top 40 hits, like I Don't Know Why I Love You and Never. I think they both stalled at like 44, I think, or some like lower reaches, like off like the charts there. But no, a great record here, and I think it's a good, it's a well balanced album, I think, as well. Like in the sense that there's always something to look forward to. It's not front loaded like with like the hits. Like I mean, like it's got like there's some cracking songs like on the second side, like In a Room and 32nd Floor, right? So it is just great, like all the way through for me. So you had to put this one in, The House of Love.
Yeah, as I said before, it's a band I know very little about. Mm-hmm. So I really do. I must check them out. Well, my next one is from who I always thought was up against Elvis Costello, and it's Graham Parker, and it's Heat Treatment from 1976. He had 2 albums that year. The first one produced by Nick Lowe. This one was produced by Robert Nutt Lang, and one song was actually produced by Nick Lowe, which was Backdoor Love. But yeah, it's just really good. It's like more soulful new wave, but great songs like That's What They All Say, Heat Treatment, and Pouring It All Out. It's just brilliant, and I just think his first 2 albums are excellent, and he just does not get the credit he deserves. Okay, and I think he's been more consistent than Elvis Costello as well, especially when you come to the mid-80s onwards, where for me, Costello was a bit hit and miss. But all his albums, there's always something good on them. He's never actually had a weak album. But yeah, this is a fantastic record from 1976 and deserved better than it got. I think it only got to number 52 in the charts. So it's Heat Treatment by Graham Parker.
Yeah, great stuff there, yeah, absolutely. So my next one, number 5, I have gone for The Church and the Blurred Crusade, an Australian band. So like this came out 82, and again a bit like the Blur one, they're very much a kind of change in direction, like for like the band. Like the debut was a lot more punky kind of feel to it, and it kind of again very short songs, very direct. But this one here. But still a brilliant record though, like The Church self-titled album, fantastic. This one though adds a lot more atmosphere, a lot more texture to it, and there's just some gorgeous songs on here, so things like Field of Mars and Interlude and A Fireburn, just wonderful like sort of like guitar sounds on it. And I think crucially why I wanted to put this one on was because it kind of set the template for the rest of their albums. Like, you know, like if like, you know, this record, I think you kind of like know every other Church album, they're very similar kind of sound, but this one very much set like the template like for them like going forward. So that's why I would include it, and it's also my favourite of theirs as well. So yeah, at number 5, The Church.
Again, another band I don't know much about. I've seen a lot of them in the BC. They seem to be very popular, but I don't think I've even heard a single Church song. Mm-hmm. But again, I need to check that out. Okay, my next one, and it's from Scotland, and it's my favourite Scottish duo, the Proclaimers and Sunshine and Leith, and this is the Record Store Day one from last year. This got to number 6 in the charts, and it contains their big hit, I'm Gonna Be 500 Miles. But it also has I'm On My Way, which I think was on the Shrek films. And the song itself, Sunshine and Leith, which is possibly my all-time favourite song. And if you ever seen them in concert and they do that, don't even listen to that. Listen to the crowd. The crowd sing the whole thing from start to finish. I think they're brilliant, and they're so consistent as well. Like, this is probably my favourite, but no, in fact, it's not my second favourite. Their 2005 album is my favourite, and you know, I could pick nearly any album. They're really excellent. I've seen them live 3 times, and they are brilliant. And they're the sort of guys, they just come on stage and get on with it. There's no frills with them. They come on in their jeans and t-shirt and away they go. Fantastic, and that definitely gets in my list. Sunshine and Leith from 1988.
Brilliant choice. Unfortunately, it's not Sunshine and Leith to like today. That's where I'm based. But no. Yeah, I'm in Leith. Yeah, absolutely at the heart of Leith. Unfortunately, no sunshine today. But no, okay, brilliant. I mean, I have actually seen them live. Like, they were supporting Paul Heaton last summer, and just fantastic. And again, like you, the song "Sunshine on Leith." Like, my dad's a big Hibs fan, and that's their like sort of club song. So again, it's a band that he's very fond of and kind of ran through me. I've not got any of their records, but I think if I was to get one, I think I'd go for that album because so many brilliant tracks on there. So sticking with us, Scotland actually for my next choice. Number 4, I've got the Jesus and Mary Chain and Darklands here. Now I've chosen this one here because again they're developing their sound. So the first album, which I know is revered and loved, Psycho Candy, I've not quite been able to get into that one yet. It's very noisy, very feedbacky kind of album. This one is a lot more refined, and I was going to say a bit more radio friendly, but I suppose it was. I mean, there was a couple of, I think like April Skies was a top 10 hit, if I'm right in saying. I think Happy When It Rains was also moderately successful, like as a single. So they definitely made it into kind of the mainstream, like on like this album. But crucially, it doesn't lose their kind of style and like their like integrity, like on here. Like there's still that's like a cool band like on like this album. I mean, they'd also went through like a lineup change as well. So like they'd lost their drummer, like Bobby Gillespie, who would go on, of course, to be in like Primal Scream. So actually, when I was reviewing this album, I actually learned that all the drums on it, like it's just a drum machine. It doesn't sound like it, doesn't feel like it. It feels live, but apparently it is all just a drum machine, which I thought like was quite incredible. And yeah, like as I said, it's a good variety of kind of more like sort of like anthemic tracks like April Skies and Happy and like Happy When It Rains, but then some more kind of moody moments as well. So all right, just a really good balanced album here, and one which I had to put on my list.
I actually bought April Skies when it came out, and I was close to buying that album, but for some reason I didn't, because I loved April Skies. And it's really weird, 2 albums in a row with the Reed brothers, 2 different sets of Reed brothers.
Oh, yeah, interesting. Oh, absolutely.
Now it's time to leave the capsule if you dare.
Okay, my number 3 is David Bowie from '69, also known as Space Oddity. This is in the upper echelons for me for David Bowie. It sometimes gets dismissed, but I think it's well into my top 10. It's actually pushing for number 5 place. I think side 1 of this is perfect with the Space Oddity, Unwashed, Somewhat Slightly Dazed, Letter to Hermione, and one of my all-time favourite Bowie songs, Signet Committee. Side 2, maybe not quite as good, but it still has The Wide-Eyed Boy from Free Cloud, Memory of a Free Festival, and The Gorgeous, An Occasional Dream. I think it's a fantastic folky type album. It's very Bob Dylan influenced, but yeah, this is brilliant. And a lot of people call this his debut. It's not. Let's be realistic. It's his second album, and it is just fantastic. And it got to number 17, but only in 1973, whenever it was reissued with a different cover, and Bowie was having huge success. Otherwise, it just flopped. So David Bowie is my number 3.
No, very good. Yeah, I mean, that's one I definitely overlooked actually, and it's probably one I've overlooked not just for this video, but just in general, to be honest. But certainly when you get like rattling off the tracks there, again, a lot of really fantastic tracks, like I think, and again, it's a very unique album again, like his discography as well. There's not another Bowie record which sounds like that, I don't think, with the very folky.
Example is, whenever I was young and my brother lived with us, and I was playing it in my bedroom, and Signet Committee was playing it. My brother actually came down to my room to ask what that song was. He was way by it, and it's one of his favourites now. So that's my favourite song.
Yeah, brilliant record there. Yeah. My number 3, I think I initially had this at number 1, but I bumped it down a little bit. Or I think maybe the other 2 bumped themselves up, so this one got brought down a little bit. So it's Steve McQueen by my Prefab Sprout here. This is just, it is their best album easily. It is just a masterful record. Brings together McAloon's brilliant songwriting and a great production by Thomas Dolby. Yeah, it is a bit overproduced. I say overproduced. I mean, it has a sheen to it, but I think it really works. It works when they combine that with his his songwriting. It's a record which is just so strong. I mean, particularly at the first side. I think the first side is faultless. There's a couple of I think Desirers and Blueberry Pies. I'm not mad. They kind of let the album down, but then there's some other great tracks, things like Horsing Around, which I didn't like at first, but has really grown on me. And it's now one of my favourites. So I had to find a place for this somewhere. It was at number 1, but it got moved down a little bit. I think just because of those 2 slightly weaker ones on the second side. But there's no denying that this is pretty much a masterpiece.
They're a band I never liked in the 80s. I've never explored them since, and whenever I heard that King of Rock and Roll, I just went, no.
Oh yeah, no, don't let that put you off. I did a top 10 Prefab Sprout songs, and that wasn't in it. And to be honest, if I was to do a top 50, I doubt King of Rock and Roll would even be in it. To be honest, I don't even know if they have 50 other songs, but it would be low down. It is a bad song, but definitely this is a great record to check out, and it's there's nothing like that on there. But yeah, like you, not a fan of that song, but that record's brilliant.
Well, this one here, I think it's one of the most shown albums on my channel, and it is The Police Regatta de Blanc, which is my favourite Police album, followed by Zenyatta Mandata. I think this is Sting at his best with Messenger in a Bottle, Walking on the Moon, Bring on the Night, and The Best Too Big Without You. But even the lesser tracks, which I didn't like when I first got it, like Contact and Everyone Stare, I absolutely love this now. I love them all. Regatta de Blanc, I think, won an award for one of the best instrumentals, even though it's not quite an instrumental. It's got Yo's and Aos and all the rest of it. Death Wish is another great track, and even the punky No Time This Time ends it. I just think it's the Police whenever they were their most, even though it's reggae, it's their most British new wave. And then I think after Zenyatta Mandata, whenever they did Ghost in the Machine and Synchronicity, they turned all American. Well, that's my thoughts anyway. And this, I just think, is an absolute masterpiece. It's my number 2.
Very good. Yeah, I think I need to give the Police in general a bit more time, because particularly like their albums. I mean, all the singles are great, but I think albums like that I've maybe not quite given enough attention to. So yeah, I'll get on that.
On your own, if they follow you.
Yeah, this one is a fairly recent discovery, maybe in the past, certainly the past year, I think, and it's quickly became one of my favourite albums. So it's Belle and Sebastian, If You're Feeling Sinister, I've gone for here. So this was recorded very quickly after their debut, both released in 1996. And I think it just kind of shows, I guess, Stuart Murdoch at the top of his game, like a writer. I think he would never bring together 10 songs as good as this again, to be honest. And it's just such a good. Again, each song is slightly different, but all just brilliant throughout. And I guess the catch with this is so good that it's made it a bit difficult to discover and sort of get into the rest of their discography, simply because you're always comparing it back to this album, and it's it's not quite as good as If You're Feeling Sinister, is it, sort of thing, with some of the other albums. So I guess it does slightly overshadow the rest of their career, I suppose. But I guess that's their fault of this album being as good as it is. So yeah, it definitely one for me which I just keep going back to. I can't get enough of this album. So that's my number 2.
Again, I don't know very much about them. They had an album called Tiger Milk, didn't they?
Yeah, that was the debut one. Yeah, so that's a bit more rough and ready. Well, even saying that, I mean, that's quite rough and that was quite rough and ready. But yeah, Tiger Milk's even more so. Yeah.
Okay, my number one is a bit of a cheat because it is it's a band name, but it's almost a completely different band. And it's Adam and the Ants.
Okay.
And it's Kings of the Frontier. And the only person that was in both albums is Adam Ant himself. Malcolm McLaren nicked the rest of the original Ants to form Bow Wow Wow. Usually they nick the lead singer and leave the band. He nicked the band and left the lead singer. Then he came, Marco Perrone, who played with Susie and the Banshees, joined up, and the two of them start writing, and this is brilliant. Full of Burundi drums and full of chants. It created Ant Mania. And you've got 3 big hit singles like Dog Eat Dog, Ant Music, and the title track. But other tracks, every track actually could have been a single, but especially Los Rancheros, Making History, and Don't Be Square Be There. They're all fantastic songs, and it was number 1 for about 9 weeks in 1981, originally released in 1980, but this is my favourite album of the 1980s. I think it's absolutely brilliant. So Adam and the Ants, Kings of the Wild Frontier.
Surprisingly, actually, I thought, like, when you said, I know what my number 1 is, I was almost thinking that you go with this one, which is like my number 1. I thought we'd have the same, so Elvis Costello, and then like this year's model, I thought might have crept onto your list.
That was one that I had. That's the one that I took off because I thought you might have it.
Well, there we go. I do have it. It is my number 1.
It wouldn't have been number 1. It would have just been in the top 10. It wouldn't have been number 1.
Fair dues. Well, this one again. This was one I originally had further down, but when I listened to it again, I had to bump it up because I just got so into it. I mean, it is. The songs are just so lyrically so clever and dense, but just really well written. Musically, there's so many hooks on this album in terms of like musical hooks. Like Steve Nay's keyboards are just brilliant, like All Night Here. And I guess it's possibly Costello's most angry album, or certainly one of his more angry albums. And it's got that kind of that kind of like funky feel to it. But I think it's that combined with just the brilliant musicianship like from like the Attractions. And I mean, so it does have that energy, but it's also it is a really well produced album as well, like by like Nick Lowe, especially considering that like these are like all these songs are performed just by like 4 musicians basically. So I think it's just a brilliant record all round for me, and it would be my number 1.
Oh, it's absolutely brilliant. I love it. I still think I prefer Armed Forces, but it's very, very close.
Yeah.
My other one, I'll tell you at the very end what else I thought you would have picked. I'll quickly run through my 3 bubbling unders. Van Morrison, Astral Weeks. Again, a lot of people think this is his first, but it's not really. Blowing your mind as his first. And this, it's a fantastic album. It's all acoustic with an upright bass, and the bass sounds out of tune, but it works so well, and it's Van Morrison's best album. A guy you just mentioned, and it's Nick Lowe's Labour of Lust. Yes, I know he was with Brinsley Schwartz and so forth, but this is a second solo album with Cruel to Be Kind and Cracking Up, I believe covered by Tom Petty as well. And I'm going to contaminate your channel with my last one, and I go with the Wombles, Remember You're a Womble, 1974. Ross, this is bloody brilliant. It's a fantastic album. There's so many different styles of music, all written by Mike Batt. Yes, they're all about wobbles, but back to my childhood, it's getting in the bubbling unders.
Okay, well, it's one of those things. I guess I'm going to show my age. I don't have a lot of nostalgia for the Wombles. I guess it's one of those things. It is a nostalgia, like Joyce there. Well, I've got a few bubbling unders. I think slightly more. I was going to be too rude to the Wombles, but yeah, like a bit more my sort of thing, I guess. So about that, mine was like Delamitri, like Waking Hours. Again, a good record. It kind of bucks the trend of second albums, because like this was the most successful, basically. So that was one of my bubbling unders. This one was going to make my list. It's Hats by the Blue Nile, but again, I thought they've only got 4 albums, so it's not. Yeah, it's just one of those things. They're not. It's not like the second in a big list of albums. It's just one of their 4 albums. But still a brilliant record though. This one again, he's a newer artist. So that's why again I didn't quite want to include it, but it's Sam Fender, fantastic newer artist, and this is just a brilliant record again. It's a big step up from the debut, so that's why I thought that one. This one is Deacon Blue, another Scottish band, When the World Knows Your Name. Again, probably the most successful albums. You got Real Gone Kid and Wages Day, and a lot of hits hits on this album, just great stuff. Kind of keeps up the momentum from their brilliant debut. This one is the Chameleons, a kind of Manchester, slightly gothy band, but this is their best album for me. So again, one which I thought I would pop on. And then one that you'd shown, Heat Treatment by Graham Parker. Again, I had as a bubbling under, but didn't quite make the cut there for me.
Well, the 2 that I thought you would include, but obviously you weren't going to include one because he was in a different band beforehand, and that was Ram by Paul McCartney.
Yeah, good. Yeah, would have been on there if I wasn't as strict with that. Yeah.
Another one I thought you might have chose, and I nearly put this in myself, was Cool for Cats by Squeeze.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean, in terms of that album, for me, it's more. I mean, the singles on that record are incredible, but as an album, there's maybe a few too many weak links on there for me. Maybe it kind of hangs together on the strength of Up the Junction, Cool for Cats, and Goodbye Girl, and maybe a few the other choice album tracks. But yeah, no, another good choice there.
Another one that I was going to include, and I haven't got it with me here, was Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark Organisation with the magnificent single Enola Gay. I think it's a very, very good album as well. In fact, OMD are one of my favourite bands. Absolutely love them.
Excellent. Yeah, I've got a few OMD records. They're all my uncle's, but I've not maybe quite given them enough time a day, so I think that's maybe something to get onto. So no, that's been really fun, Richard. I've really enjoyed going through those our 10 second albums there. So it's been a pleasure having you on my channel again.
And thanks for inviting me. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Excellent stuff. So yeah, hope you've all enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
All the best. Bye bye.